and sticking with it. So progression frameworks, as Johnny says, they can really, really help you on this process that you're going through with your teams to give better clarity over the roles and skills that are present in your teams today and might be present tomorrow as well. So what we wanted to do now is just kind of go through some of the stages that we identify as part of the framework building and rollout process, and also some of the sort of tips, tricks and traps that people fall into at those various different stages. So I'm going to read these out one by one, and if they resonate with you where you are with your current sort of building process, just stick your hand up or give us a reaction, whatever works. And hopefully we can get a sense of where everyone in the room is right now. So exploring and researching. If you're in this stage, you're probably looking around at what other companies are doing, trying to get a sense of how other frameworks are being used. If this is you, just give us a quick reaction or a quick hands up. Just if you're trying to find out a little bit more about frameworks and why they might work. Okay, we've got a couple coming in. Thanks, Annalise. Manali, thank you. Great. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about exploring and researching and some of the ways progression can help you with that as well. If you're currently writing and reviewing content, this is probably going to be, if I put a bet on it, the majority of the room. This is what can kind of take a little bit of time in the process. You can find yourself sort of trying to boil the ocean with writing a bunch of content that answers all of those questions in your team. There's going to be some people in the room who are on the rollout stages, so trying to publicize their framework, get everyone bought in and kind of feeling it, getting to see that that's going to work for them. Okay, I've got a couple of hands up in the chat as well. Thank you. And I think there's probably going to be some veteran framework builders here that have had a framework in place for a little while and they're now looking to iterate on that, or maybe even launch a brand new version altogether. Okay, some hands there as well. Great. So the good news is that we have got content ready for this presentation for all of these different stages, and we're going to walk you through, in our experience, what works best to kind of get you out of those framework building ruts wherever you are. So exploring and researching. Some of the traps you might fall into. So not being clear on what problem you're solving. And Johnny kind of alluded to this a little bit and where we can help. There are loads of different problems that having a framework can solve, whether that's giving existing team members clarity on the role that they're doing today and the skills involved with that, or if it's about kind of getting people benchmarked against where they should sit in the organization today. You know, maybe you've got someone in a junior role who wants to move into a senior role. You're trying to see whereabouts they are on that scale and what you need to do support-wise to get them to that next step as well. So be really clear on the problem that you're solving. Make a list. You know, are you actually introducing a framework to give transparency in salary bands, to give better visibility of the skills that people need to kind of work on and harness and get training around? Make a list of those problems and then focus on one or two of those that you want to get to first. A framework will sprawl out of control and will become a much sort of bigger process if you're not really clear on what you're wanting to use it for in the first place. Okay, that's trap number one. Trap number two, thinking you should start from scratch. So the good news is, if you're exploring and researching, what you're probably starting to find is that there are a whole heap of frameworks out there. Lots of frameworks set public on progression. That's a really good place to start. But there are also sort of guides and things like that available that we've kind of harnessed in progression.fyi as well. So you don't need to start from scratch. There's loads of stuff out there. We're here to help as well if you need us. Start by looking at what other teams are doing. So if you're a product team, look at other product teams, their frameworks, what they've been doing. And as I said, there's the library. We've got some progression frameworks. Will, thank you so much. There's a great example in the chat, career frameworks as well. So loads of things out there to take inspiration from. So don't feel like you need to stare at a blank page and try and do it all on your own. Okay. And finally, not anticipating concerns. So this can be a really sort of sensitive area for people. We're talking about their careers, we're talking about their responsibilities, their roles at work. So definitely make sure that you're thinking about the questions that you're going to get when you're starting to kind of roll out a framework. So you want to kind of bring people along with you and talk to them about this process. And again, being really clear on what problems you're trying to solve is going to help you to anticipate the concerns people are going to have around this. So find your allies internally and share your plan. It's really important to kind of socialize this as a thing. A framework should involve multiple people in the organization. It should never be a solo project. So if you've kind of found yourself in that place of, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to roll this out for my entire organization, for my team all alone, just start to kind of socialize it a bit more, get some people in your corner and get people bought into what you're trying to do. Because if you try and do this on your own, you're going to probably come up against a lot more concerns from people as you go. So always good to have allies, and we're in your corner as well if you need us.
Thanks, Meg. I'll take this one on. Or are you doing this one? I'll do this one.
You do this one.
Okay, I'll crack on. Writing your content. Oh, man. I've been writing this content for 3-4 years. It is hard. So let's talk about this. Blank sheet of paper. That is the worst place to start, in my opinion. Even having something to react to and decide is completely awful and completely not what you want is better than starting from a blank sheet of paper or a blank spreadsheet. What I would recommend is that you start with what you know. So there may be a couple of company values that you can throw in to start with, or there may be some generic company-wide things that just should be true. We have tons of that stuff in our library, so that can get you started. And start small, pick 3, and then you're off to the races. Boiling the ocean with endless skills. One of the worst things that you can do is put in everything that you could ever possibly imagine anyone ever doing ever. In the early days of building progression, some of our early customers were adding 50 skills to a role and more. And just imagine the user experience of someone trying to digest all of that at the other end. Really think about how to trim your content right down. It makes it easier for you, and it also makes it more palatable for everyone that has to read it. So we recommend sort of 12, 15 skills is about the sweet spot for enough granularity for you, but not completely ridiculous, and also doesn't mean it's going to be a 1-year project. So small is better. The last one, writing on your own and losing momentum. Sometimes just one conversation can unlock hours of work. That's true whatever you're working on. So if you're stuck and you're just like choosing between 2 sentences and you can't decide which one, definitely pull someone else in. Collaboration is really, really good for all of this stuff. And to Meg's point on the earlier slide, if other people feel bought in at this stage, then they'll support you when you get to the next stage of rolling out, which is also tricky and fraught with danger. So writing's a team sport. And with that, I thought I'd show you a couple of the things in progression. It's the one live demo that we're going to attempt during this, and we'll see if it explodes. Hopefully it won't. I'm going to switch over to a demo team. And first of all, I'll show you our library. So if you're unfamiliar with our library, there's an absolute ton of stuff available. You can actually, without even logging in, you can go to progression.co and then go to templates, and then there's loads and loads of things for you to explore here. And you can see, depending on whether you're building an individual team or a whole organization, we've got lots of interesting content. That is also all available within our product as well. So if you go down here to the library at the bottom, we have skills, collections, and frameworks. A framework is literally the whole thing in a bundle. So I could build an entire product design team with those positions and with those skills all wrapped up with a bow. Very useful for getting started, although I would absolutely then read through it and make sure that it matches what you want, and you can edit everything there. Or skills. So if I go into an individual framework, in fact, I'm going to switch over to our live team. So this is progression using progression. And I'm in our software engineering team now. I can now browse from within the team different skills that we might need. So I might decide that everyone needs to be more curious. So here's my curiosity skill that I've created. I can just add that into this framework. I'm not going to do that because otherwise all the engineers will suddenly need to be more curious, and that's above my job description or payroll to make that decision. But if you can't find what you want in here, we have a magical button, generate new skill. We're on the AI train. This has been live for a year or more, and it is pretty magical. And we're about to start investing a lot more in AI and helping you to build in a variety of different ways and audit and keep your frameworks consistent, all of that kind of stuff. But I'll demo this very basic version. Does anyone have a skill that they don't want to write themselves that I can write for you in the next 20 seconds? Please do write it in the chat and we can go from there. Otherwise, I'll make something up. Anything obscure?
We did once write a skill for Santa delivering presents. So
We did a
anything is
Christmas skill.
possible.
Okay. ISO SOC 2. Oh, juicy. Okay, yeah, let's do security. And then this feels like I'll call it engineering. And then one of the examples can be ISO SOC 2 compliance. Would it? My inability to type is being revealed live on air. What else? Writing tests. Okay, let's press go. Isaac, sorry, I didn't see. I could have made Agile Coach for you. That would have been. Progression's now thinking, and hopefully in mere seconds, we will have a completed skill. Okay. So this is the skill that Progression's created for us. It's added an example for ISO SOC 2 compliance and general descriptors for level 1 to 5 of this security skill. So you can use this gives you a good start. If I'd written more examples, it would have given a deeper set of examples in the final skill. But this cuts through time, and sometimes it makes strange things. We've listed it as beta for a reason, but as I mentioned earlier, starting from something is better than starting from nothing. And even if you end up rewriting 50% of it, then I can promise it's a much quicker process. But sometimes it's uncannily good. So I would fully recommend you get involved in that. If you haven't used Logged Into Progression recently, that's available on all plans, including our free plans. So you should be able to get going fairly quickly there. Okay, end of demo. I will switch back.
Thanks, Ben, as well, for giving a shout out for using the AI generator to make a Unity skill, and it did a good job. So that's good to hear. It's a really great thing to do. We've had a couple of suggestions for skills to create. Definitely go away, have a play with this. It's great fun. You can make loads of stuff in mere seconds.
Make weird stuff.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Good stuff and weird stuff. Okay. Meg?
Yeah.
Me.
This is, I'll do this one. You took writing, I'll take rollout. Okay, so rolling out, we promised we'd go through all of the stages. So at this point, you've got your framework, you've got some content. Hopefully you've kind of socialized that a little bit more, but you're probably coming into questions about how we should use this day to day. So a good thing to kind of imagine this stuff a little bit sooner, but if you haven't, here's some of the stuff that we recommend doing. So, okay, we're going through a slightly different order on these. We'll go through all the problems, then we'll go through all of the solutions.
There we go.
Okay, right. How should we use it day to day? Establish your first rituals. So one of the things that we suggest when you're rolling out your framework is to complete a round of check-ins on progression, which is essentially a way that people can engage with the skills that you've created. They can start to kind of imagine themselves alongside those skills and the levels and start to think about the examples that they do day to day in the work that they're doing. So they can start to sort of engage with the content and give you feedback as it goes. It's a really nice way of sort of low resistance, getting a check-in in progress, starting people using progression, getting their hands on it, getting a feel for what it can do. And they can also start to sort of say, okay, this skill maybe doesn't feel exactly right for me and where I am right now. Let's tweak that down a bit. Getting that buy-in is also going to help you get people excited about progression. So sell them the value. By engaging with this content, they're going to be able to articulate far better in career conversations where they are now and where they want to be as well. So instead of having sort of a one-to-ones each week that don't really have like a really clear direction, you're not sure exactly what skills you want to talk about or where those blockers are for you taking the next step in your career, you're able to sell that value here because progression is going to make all of that really transparent, really clear and more fair as well. So gone are the days where you've got two people doing the same job and actually you can't really distinguish, you know, where those two people are in comparison. You know, we're all built differently. We're all different shaped people. We're going to have our strengths and weaknesses, and this is going to help you to get visibility of those and a fair representation across the board as well. And finally, making sure everyone feels ownership. So ask for feedback. As I said, check-ins are a really nice way of doing this, but establish those rituals to get feedback consistently as well. The trap here is really falling into I'm just going to ask for feedback once and then never go for it again. Your framework should grow with you over time, and it should change. So ask for feedback, really listen to that, and make sure that you've set up avenues where that feedback can come in regularly as well. If we don't ask for feedback, we won't always get it. Not everyone is, super confident and vocal with sharing that unless they're given a route to do it. So make sure you're thinking about that when you're rolling out your framework.
Fantastic. Okay. And final step, and this is the step that continues, is a great continuation of what Meg was just saying, is internally we talk about your progression framework being a product, not a project. So many people turn up and they're like, in Q2, I'm shipping the progression frameworks. And then in Q3, I'm doing something completely different. And the bulk of the initial work absolutely does happen in a big wodge. And that's what we've just been talking about. But then it does need continual love and attention and small improvements. And what you don't want to get to is this bubble, which is someone turning up and saying, oh, it's just old and no one's looked at it for ages and we just need to start again. Because then you have to do everything we just talked about all over again with a new set of people who need to get bought into the whole process again. Whereas if you'd been chipping away at it and every team was still excited about it and still engaged with it, then it's a much easier conversation to just to keep it going. So ideally be improving it constantly. If you're past that point and you're at the sort of it's old, we need to start again, that's fine too. But it's a less ideal situation to find yourself in. Some teams aren't using it, especially new managers. So it's common that we see that a new person turns up and they're like, I haven't read any of this. It's a bit like if you're writing code and someone tries to read your code, and because they didn't write it themselves, it's just harder for them to understand. So think about building your progression framework into the very start of your process when new people join or when new executives appear and are interested in this kind of stuff. Take them through it one-to-one. Make sure that they have an opportunity to feedback, pull in their improvements and help them feel like they co-own it early on. And then you're less likely to feel that gradual drop off of team by team people sort of becoming less engaged because the content just doesn't match what they now believe to be what they need. And how do I edit it while it's live? This is something that's sort of a practical problem on with one of these things, is like, how do we sort of switch people out when some people are using it and they've set their expectations in one direction and now we want to change those expectations? Candidly, this is just a difficult thing to do. One of the best things that you can do is clearly explain what the changes are that you're making. In fact, Isaac, I can see you there. We talked about this last week or the week before, how to think about building a change log or a diff or some way of showing, okay, here's what it was before and here's what it is now. This is something that in progression we're really interested in supporting automatically. So whenever you make a change, it's really visible what's changed. So when someone looks at their role and they feel like it's different to what it was, they can actually just go back through and read. And actually in progression, you do get version history already. So if someone's looking at their position and they click history, then they can look at everything that's changed historically. We want to do much more around that and give you more control and power there. But yeah, we hear you. It's a hard bit of working out how to solve this, because this is real people and their hopes and dreams and what they're designing their work around. So it's serious stuff. Okay, Meg, over to you.
Yeah, next steps. And thank you everyone who's replied in the chat. As I said, any questions, make sure you're dropping them in the chat. We're going to cover as many of those as possible. And thanks to everyone who's added questions already. We're going to get to those next. But before we do, just a few sort of quick next steps that you can take away after this webinar using progression to kind of help move you forward in your framework build. So Number one, try out the AI assistant for the next skill that you add. As Johnny has so brilliantly demonstrated, the AI builder works really quickly. It's great. It's going to give you content based on what you put in. So as much sort of prompt as you can put in around a skill and things you know about it already, you can build a skill in minutes and kind of take that workload off of your shoulders of kind of wordsmithing until the late hours, trying to write your own skill from scratch. Invite your colleagues to review your work in progress. This is something that can feel really sort of tricky to do, especially if you've dedicated a bit of time into your framework build already. You can feel quite protective over it and like that you don't want to share it in case people don't maybe respond in the way that you hope that they would. But it's so important to socialize your work in progress as you go. It's going to help get buy-in from other people. It's going to help them realize what you're trying to do and that you really care about this as an output for people to use and get the most out of it in their careers. So invite your colleagues into progression, ask them for feedback on something specifically. Is there a specific skill or a specific position in your framework that's, you know, keeping you up at night? You want a little bit more feedback on it. Make sure you ask for that. Run a check-in with a colleague to see how that content feels. This is a nice way if you don't just want to sort of invite someone in cold to look at the whole thing. Ask them to run a check-in with you on a position and see how that feels to them. This is a really nice thing to do if you're working on that person's role specifically as well, because they're going to know the skills that they use every day and they're going to know how it feels to kind of check in against those levels and those examples. So they can really inform that next sort of content iteration that you're going to do as well. Check out the progression library and our public frameworks. You know, chances are someone's done it before. You might not be spearheading the framework build for your particular department. So check out what other teams have done and use that to kind of set a benchmark for what you're doing. And finally, contact us for one-to-one advice and support. Obviously, we're going to keep doing webinars like this. This is the second of 3 in a series. We're going to keep doing these, but we're also available to talk to you one-on-one about your specific questions and your specific sort of traps that you've fallen into or steps that you want to take next. So please do that. We're always available to help. We're really nice people, so you should talk to us. And those are your next steps. If in doubt about how to contact us, you can reach us at support@progression.co. We also have live chat in the app. So there's a chat bubble in the bottom right-hand corner. Feel free to click that, say hello. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And we can always book in time to sort of speak face-to-face as well.
Oh, I have my Jobsy in one more thing moment now, very quickly. But what please do add. We've got a couple of minutes for questions, and we'd love to get through a couple. So please do add your questions. In the meantime, though, it even has a QR code. There's a template, a Notion template that you can use that we've been working on. That is basically a ruddy long checklist of things that you might want to think about when you're doing this. And it'll be very pleasing because for a lot of you, you'll have done half of it already and you can have that satisfying checkbox feeling. But this is yours to tweak and improve as you need. And it's a very useful shared document to show internally, to show how much work you're doing, you know, because these things are not easy, but also to get buy-in on the various stages and to ask for help as well. So fully recommend that, bit.ly/progression-checklist. And we can send that out in an email afterwards, I'm sure, as well. Questions? Yes, we love a checklist, Nelly. We love a checklist. Maybe we'll be a checklist company. We love checklists, especially Notion ones. They're so satisfying.
Okay, let's go to some of the questions in the chat. I've picked out a couple. There's one that starts with, "Hey Meg, great webinar." So that person's coming straight to the top of my list. Just one quick question. We are creating job descriptions which highlight skills needed for junior, mid-senior. Is there a template for that? The answer is yes, we do have templates. We've got templates specific for each team as well. So Anjali, I'm not sure what team you're a part of, but we should be able to help you out with junior, mid-senior. It's quite a common template that we have across multiple different teams. So have a little search on the library. If you don't find what you're looking for, reach out to us via support. We'll do our best to help you out on that as well. There's a question in here, Johnny, that I think has your name all over it, which is, any best practices you guys have discovered when establishing what should be in each level of the progression framework? So any thoughts on that one, Johnny? I've got a couple, if that helps.
It's I'm trying to work out how to answer this in anything shorter than another half hour. I would just start somewhere and get feedback. I wouldn't overthink necessarily your first answer. If you're building a framework for a discipline that you are not familiar with, especially, start with something and allow the team to help you out. And then, as Meg suggested, actually run a check-in with someone in each level and get a sense of like, they'll very quickly tell you when they're like, I not only don't do this, but there is no opportunity for me to do this within my role, so it shouldn't be in here. And then that's a very quick way to just start to get a sense check. And honestly, over the first 1-2 real check-ins, then very quickly you'll also be like, this needs to change. This isn't actually what we believe. And that's the beauty of using your progression framework in real life, is that's the best way to get feedback, basically. So get started, I suppose, is my best practice, and don't overthink it.
Yeah, definitely. Good advice. And there's one more question, which again it's a long answer, but we'll try and get through it quickly. Is, Will, I've seen generic frameworks and team specific frameworks. What would you say are the pros and cons of each approach? And there are pros and cons to each approach there. What I would say is, if you're starting with something generic, it's a really good foundation to then build upon. Having something is better than nothing, because you're going to be able to open those lines of communication with the team. They're going to be able to tell you what they think is missing and what is, covered really well. What we often find companies doing is starting with things like company values as a good foundation, because they're things that are expected of everyone within the organization, and you can kind of start from there and build your way up. So a generic framework, I would say, is a really good place to start, but you're going to fall down when it comes to people asking for specifics on what they need to do to take the next step, because with a generic framework, you're leaving a lot of room for interpretation there. So the more specific you can be about sort of skill examples in your organization, that's where to sort of add in the really juicy content to sort of say to someone, okay, if you want to take this next step, here's an example of what that looks like, and go into detail there, rather than maybe in a communication skill description, which, you can be quite generic, maybe at the high level with that. Hopefully
I would also add it goes back to answering those 1 to 2 top questions. If your first most important question is to like solve this for the data team, then go and do that. If your the most important thing is everyone has something, then I maybe start generic and then build an individual team after that. So it's really just sort of, that priority list is really important. Otherwise you'll get lost in having to do everything for everyone on day one. And then it feels overwhelming, and then you stop basically, or you're at risk of it.
For sure. I'm conscious that we're running slightly over, so I'm going to wrap things up now, but thanks to everyone who's put questions in the chat. We will come back to you all separately on those. We'll do a little sum up as well in some of the newsletters and things we've got coming up, just to make sure that we're sharing answers to all of those questions as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to join today, for popping in your questions, for giving your reactions. It's really great to have you all with us. Make sure you tune in next week at 3 on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about unlocking growth in your team. So diving into wins, check-ins, actions, feedback, all of those things are going to help your people engage with your framework as well. So don't miss that. But thank you again, everyone, for your time, and we will see you hopefully next week.
Thank you. Hit reply and tell us what else you'd love us to talk about as well. That would be really useful. Okay. Oh, I'm stopping. Okay.